Hey, it's Meggie Kay. So today I wanted to talk about driving in Japan. Now, a lot of people will talk about taking the trains around Japan and the trains are really awesome, but in my experience living in Japan and traveling around Japan, there are lots of places that the trains don't really go to, or the trains are very inconvenient to get to it. I know around my prefecture, and I feel like most of Kyushu, driving is the best way to get around, as well as I've been planning trips to Shikoku where I'll bring my car, and I'm planning on renting a car after taking a flight somewhere else. So I do think that driving in Japan is something that you should look into or consider if you're gonna come to Japan. So while I've been driving around Japan for over a year now, I have noticed a few things. Things that kind of annoy me, things that I think are just kind of funny and different and amusing and frustrating. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video about like 5 things I've realized about driving in Japan, or 5 things that you might want to know about if you're gonna drive in Japan. So let's get into it. So number 1 is the tolls. Now, Japan doesn't really have like free highways that I'm used to in Canada. We have some that are like private and you have to pay for, but a lot of the highways are free. That doesn't exist in Japan unless it's like a very new chunk of highway. It'll be free for a little bit and then they'll put the toll on. But basically, generally speaking, if you want to take a highway of any kind, it's going to be a toll. And you just need to be aware of that, because while sometimes it doesn't actually make too much of a difference depending on where you're going, there are places I've driven to where I could take the toll, but driving on the little mountain roads is the exact same time, or like maybe only 10 minutes more, so it's not worth the money. But there are other times where you can either take the toll or little mountain roads, and the little mountain roads will be like 4 times longer to get to your destination. So you really have to like look whether toll roads are practical or not. I also just wanted to mention that yes, toll roads can be expensive, but from where I'm living to the city, if I take the toll, I get there in half the time, and it's actually cost me less than the train ticket would. So you need to kind of like consider that. Sometimes the toll is actually the cheaper option. You know, sometimes it is frustrating to have to take tolls, but other times it's cheaper than other forms of transportation. So really, you know, you win some, you lose some with the tolls. So I would say, you know, it's just something to consider. So number 2 is tiny roads. There are tiny roads in Japan, and like these roads basically only fit 1 car. Like if you look at this road, it looks like a single lane street, but it is a 2-way street, and you have to like squeeze by other like drivers coming the other way, or pull off, or like let people pass. And when I first got to Japan and I first started driving, these were like the most frustrating things ever, and I hated them. And you know, after driving for over a year, I'm just like, I'm used to it. Like it's just life here now. That's just what you do. But they are still kind of annoying, and I really hate the tiny roads. Like if these were roads back in Canada, they would be 1-way streets. Cars would not be allowed to go both ways on roads that barely fit 1 car. And I don't drive a big car. I have a tiny little K car. It's not like I'm driving a very big car, and when I see people driving these like really like bigger cars, I'm like, how do you maneuver around these tiny little roads? I don't know how you do it. So yeah, tiny roads are something to be aware of, and I personally really hate. So number 3 is kind of personal. It's about me. I have become much more aggressive with my driving, which you would think in a country that's known for being very like polite and courteous and whatever, and like you will see people like bowing while driving, which I don't think is very safe. So before coming to Japan, I was very much a cautious driver. I didn't like driving. I would avoid driving if I could. And so I was like very, very cautious every time I did. I was like cautious to the point where I was one of those people that would go around the block. I would take 4 right turns before I take a left turn without a light. Like, I don't do that. I don't put myself in those situations. I will take the long way if I feel like it's a safer option and a more like cautious option to do. And now in Japan, I don't, because I can't. You can't do that here. Like, there are the tiny roads I mentioned, and you either have to like just pull over real quick or take a sharp turn or like back up and not really care and just gotta do things. There's lots of very sharp corners where you're like turning more than 90 degrees to get somewhere, and a lot of them are also like blind corners, and you just gotta like go and hope for the best because there's really no accurate way. Like, basically when I pull out of my parking lot onto the road, there is no way for me to see around a wall that's right there, and I just have to like just do it and hope for the best. And between that and like the really sharp curves and the winding roads, and just like, I've definitely become much more aggressive, and I'll just take turns wherever I want instead of going around the block, because a lot of times the roads don't go around the block, they go somewhere else. And it's just a very different driving situation here that has caused me to become a bit more aggressive with my driving. I don't know if aggressive is the right word I'm looking for. Become more, I don't know how to explain it. You know what I mean though, right? Like, I'm just taking turns and throwing caution to the wind half the time because there's no other way to drive in Japan. I can't be very cautious and taking my time and whatever. You gotta do it when you can. So number 4 is about the cars in Japan. Now in Japan there are different classifications for cars. There are like, what I would consider just like a regular car is like a white plate, but they also have something called a K car, which is actually what my car is and what I drive on a regular basis. And it is like a lightweight car, and it has like a less powerful engine, and the fees for the car are a bit less than a regular white plated car. And if you're not very good at geography, Japan has lots and lots of mountains, and especially where I'm living, there's lots of mountains, and I have to go up tiny little mountain roads on a regular basis, and the K cars will struggle. So the K car has the less powerful engine. I don't actually know like the specifics of it. It is like a full functioning car, but going up steep mountain roads in a little K car, there have been times where I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna make it. And the first time I drove my car, I was like really scared because it sounds different. Like, it was making this like kind of like sound, and if my car back home ever made sounds like that, like, I would think it was dying. I would want to take it into a mechanic because something is seriously wrong with my car. But that is just the way K cars are. I mean, K cars are basically glorified golf carts, and you're gonna take your glorified golf cart and go up a mountain with it, and you are gonna have your foot down on the pedal as far as it'll go and still barely reach 10 kilometers an hour. And it's just this funny situation that I don't think happens in any other country besides Japan. Or at least I've never heard of this happening before. Is this a thing in other countries? Because, like I said, I thought my car was dying when I first drove it, and then like struggling to get up mountains where like I actually like rolled down a little bit. Like, it was struggles. I made it, I did it. I think maybe driving a K car is one of the reasons I've become more aggressive, like driving up the mountain and just like praying that I make it and just gonna do it anyways. Like, that has added to that aggressive driver mentality that I mentioned before. I don't know. But it's a thing in Japan. So finally, number 5 is parking. And this is one of the things where I'm just like, I don't understand Japanese people. Like, why Japanese people parking in Japan? Basically, Japanese people will do whatever they want whenever they want. They will park where there is no parking spots because they just want to. Like, they make their own parking spot on a regular basis. I see this. Just like, pull up, there's no parking spot, I'm just gonna park here anyways. I'm like, how do you not get tickets for this? What? You see this in parking lots a lot where they will just like park an extra spot over like next to the other cars, which, I mean, theoretically seems fine, but then you realize that they're blocking the path in and out. Like, that is a lane so people can leave the parking lot, and you're just gonna park there. Okay, whatever, do whatever you want. Don't care about other people, but just whatever. The most frustrating one though is when they park on sides of the roads. Because like I mentioned, they're tiny, tiny little roads. And this particularly annoyed me one time. While driving through my town, it was at one of those tiny little roads and it was across the railway track. Now it doesn't go like straight across, it was like an angle. Now I could see on the other side of this railway track that there was a truck coming up the road, and this is actually a fairly large truck for Japanese standards, at least. It's not worldwide, like generally a big truck, but Japanese standards, it was a fairly big truck, and this is a very tiny road. Now, I was like stopped at the railway track about to cross over, seeing this truck come, and I'm like, oh well, on this side of the track that I'm on, there's not a lot of room. But just over, there is like a little like extra side part of the road that makes it really easy to like pull over and have people like cross the railway track. So I was like, okay, well, his side of the track has a lot more room than mine, so I'm just gonna go over. And then I realized someone parked on the road in that like, it's not a full like lane, it doesn't actually fit a car, but it's just like, just enough extra space so you can like pass people. And someone parked there, just parked. And you got this oversized truck coming down a tiny road and I need to like squeeze past, and I'm just like, why would you park there? Like, these streets will barely fit one car on its own, and you decide to just like park there and cause traffic jams. Like, what? Don't park on this street. Go to a different street that has slightly more space. Like, any more space than this would be fine. But like, you pick the most inconvenient spot to just like park up your car. Ugh. Oh, and the other thing is that when they do actually park into parking spots, a lot of the times they're not very straight. Like, I have seen cars on like 45-degree angles into parking spots, and while like you're technically in the line still, you're making it a bit difficult for me to pull into the spot beside you, bro. Like, is it that difficult to like just straighten out your car a little bit? Yes, no, like, I don't understand Japanese people in parking. That's the moral of this. If you drive around Japan, you might see some crazy parking going on. So yeah, those were 5 things that I noticed about driving in Japan, and maybe if you come to Japan and are driving around, you will notice similar things, or maybe just like keep an eye out for these kind of things. If you drive in Japan, let me know the things you've noticed that are strange or different or frustrating for you driving in Japan. And yeah, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because I'll be back with another one soon. Bye!